Jujutsu Kaisen manga spoilers. You've been warned. It's finally happened. Satoru Gojo of Jujutsu Kaisen fame has actually lost. The character known for being unbeatable actually lost. Satoru Gojo, the untouchable. He can pull you closer and erase you from existence, or he can amp his power with his domain expansion and then fry your brain with an endless flow of information. But as with almost all overpowered characters in fiction, we will learn more about their broken abilities, including weaknesses, and eventually they will all fall. This has happened with Gojo. Gege Akutami has now given us an instruction manual to defeat the Enlightened One. So I want to go over this battle and discuss how Sukuna actually did it, because I actually do think that the way Gege highlighted Gojo's weaknesses throughout the course of the series was good writing. You can say that Gojo is overpowered done right, because you cannot argue that Gege has not given him weaknesses throughout the series, as these were exploited on multiple occasions. Now of course, the first step in taking on Gojo is you need to be strong, and I mean attack potency and durability. You both gotta take a hit and dish out a hit. Sure, is your attack potency useless if you cannot get past infinity? Yeah, but also if you cannot pack a punch, then bypassing infinity is useless. So whether this be your physical body or your curse techniques, you need to be strong enough to defeat Gojo. Because he is not strong just because of his powers protecting him. We see in the fight that Gojo is battling against Sukuna, who is making himself stronger. And yet, not only is Gojo holding his own, but also he's just throttling him at times. Sukuna matches this requirement perfectly though, because he has actually more than twice as much curse energy than Gojo, and has an incredibly high output. The other obvious requirement for beating Gojo is to be fast enough to fight him. He was stated to be the fastest sorcerer in the series. He could probably even blitz some of the other top tiers like Maki. Just think of how much Maki struggled against a nerfed 15-finger Sukuna, whose speed would be nothing compared to Gojo. If you're not fast enough to fight Gojo, he's blitzing you. Now, even though neither Toji nor Kenjaku defeated Gojo for good, we can still see what they used against him to highlight Gojo's weaknesses. The main thing that we learned from Toji was that power nullification works on Gojo's infinity, as it works by essentially shutting off the infinity space when it touches it, breaking Gojo's shield. But a lot of the other weaknesses Gojo had in this fight are irrelevant because they only applied to a weakened, pre-awakened teen Gojo. The next thing we see is in Shibuya. The disaster cursors start using an ability called domain amplification. Domain amplification is similar to if instead of forming your domain expansion, you actually just surround yourself in an armor of your domain. It still grants you the neutralization or nullification aspect of what a domain does, as domain expansions do nullify curse techniques. Now, there is a debate of how effective domain amplification is and how it works. It seems part of the fandom believes that it is a power-based power nullification, and there actually is a lot of evidence for that. As if you compare Sukuna and the Disaster Curse's uses, you can see that it might be power-based, as the Disaster Curse's domain amplifications were not that effective against Gojo, but Sukuna's was very effective against a stronger Gojo. The difference is that Sukuna is as strong as Gojo, or at least around his level, and the Disaster Curses are a lot weaker than Gojo. Also, Gojo increased the power of his infinity to resist it better, so there's a lot of evidence that it is a power-based power nullification. But if you read more of the descriptions for how the ability works, it's almost like battlefield removal, but placed on Gojo's technique, as it is described by Kusakabe as pouring the opponent's curse technique into an empty space. It's basically a form of power nullification and spatial manipulation at the same time. You can also look at how Sukuna's domain amplification worked against the different types of Gojo's techniques. Against the neutral limitless, the infinity, it cut through it like butter, essentially. But when it came to blue, Sukuna actually struggled a lot more against it. He couldn't nullify it. Same with red. And purple, basically, he would still lose his hands against the regular purple. And if you think about it, blue is just the infinity amplified by cursed energy. Red is just the infinity amplified by positive energy, and it's twice as powerful. And then purple is a combination of both. So if you think about it, each of those are just getting stronger, and then each of those are therefore resisting domain amplification even better. So you can make a good argument that this power nullification is a power-based power nullification, whereas a lot of power nullifications can just be outright power nullifications. We also learned that Gojo is weak to sealing, as he was sealed away by the prison realm. Now, it does seem that the prison realm wasn't just sealing, but also power nullification as well, because once the conditions are met, the tendrils of the box actually hit Gojo and shut off his power, so he can't even really defend himself. Another thing going into this fight was people debating about how good really was Gojo's spatial manipulation, because there is one thing that is stated in JJK Volume 0 that Gojo controls space at the atomic level. Now, this sounds really cool, and it sounds really good. The issue with that is that space is way below subatomic. It's actually subphotomic. Atoms are like the building blocks of our universe, but atoms are way bigger than photons. Photons are tiny, yet photons occupy space. So this actually kind of works as a limiter for Gojo's control of a space, because space is a lot smaller than the atomic, as space is actually literally everything. So you could argue if he went against a spatial magic user who didn't have that limit of controlling only the atomic level, you could argue that their space would be stronger than Gojo's, and that might be what happens later on. We'll see. Now, if you guys do want to enjoy this video, please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You can also join my Discord and follow me on Twitter. Both those will be linked down below. So, Gojo versus Sukuna. The fight starts with Gojo going all out from afar. He does a hollow purple that is amplified with ritualistic chants, letting him do a 200% power hollow purple. Furthermore, it is amped by Urahime's curse technique, making it around 20% stronger. This would hit Sukuna and take off his arm, leading to more abilities that are required for taking on Gojo. If you get hit by his hollow purple and you do not have a resistance to that level of power, it will be as if your body is being erased. This is where healing is going to be very important, as losing an arm, leg, or taking a hit from purple in a mortal area can be the end of the battle for you. Luckily for Sukuna, he had reverse curse technique and was able to heal himself. From here on, we actually get into the real battle. Gojo and Sukuna exchange blows, thanks to domain amplification, allowing the King of Curses to bypass the infinity. This would lead into their first of many domain clashes. Sukuna will take the victory in the first domain clash, because Sukuna has a very large range of his borderless domain. He was able to attack Gojo's domain from the outside, and the outside of a domain is weak, far weaker than the inside, usually. With Gojo's domain destroyed and now trapped inside the countless slashes emitted by Sukuna's malevolent shrine, this is where we see they need a whole other level of power to take down Gojo. Because even with easily hundreds of slashes from Cleave and Dismantle hitting Gojo instantly, he was actually fine. This is because Gojo can heal himself incredibly fast with reverse curse technique. Not only that, they can also fight while recovering from the attacks. Remember, Sukuna was already comparable in power to Gojo, but he would be amped in power by having his Malevolent Shrine activated. Yet this many slashes of Sukuna's amped attacks are not enough to actually kill Gojo, because he's regenerating so fast that it didn't even really matter what the attacks were doing. Gojo would then bide his time and activate Simple Domain, which nullified the sure hit technique. Unfortunately, because Gojo had used his domain and it was destroyed, his technique was burnt out, meaning he would need to wait for his technique to restore to use it. But Gojo always finds a way to break the rules of the power system. Instead of using RCT to heal his body, he actually used it to restore his burnt out curse technique, giving him the Limitless back, and the ability to expand his domain. But knowing that his domain was weak to attacks from the outside, he flipped his domain, making the inside weak and the outside strong. But Sukuna would counter this by shutting off the sure hit within his domain so that it would be even stronger on the outside of the domain, destroying it once again. Next, Gojo makes his domain smaller on the outside, thus making it stronger, but Sukuna counters again by lessening the range of his sure hit to make it even stronger, strong enough to again destroy the barrier. But this was Gojo's plan, continuously deploying domains because Sukuna could not keep up. Gojo has the 6 eyes, Sukuna doesn't. Due to this, Gojo would finally activate his domain expansion before Sukuna, even though it was just 0.01 seconds faster, letting Unlimited Void hit Sukuna for that fraction of a second, and allowing Gojo to land a devastating blow, and then beating him in a fight for 2 minutes and 40 seconds, breaking the Malevolent Shrine, before it could break Unlimited Void, and trapping the King of Curses within the Endless Information. But this would reveal Sukuna's trump card, the Shikigami Maharaga. Maharaga broke from the Unlimited Void as Sukuna had him adapting to it across the 5 domain clashes as he hid in the shadows. This effectively meant that Gojo's domain expansion was now useless against the general, making adaptation a highly effective ability against the Enlightened one. But just because Maharaga had adapted to Unlimited Void did not mean that Sukuna had the W here. Maharaga would still need to adapt to Infinity, Blue, Red, and Purple. This would put Sukuna at a disadvantage, as he could not use domain amplification effectively from here on out, because that would actually nullify the adaptation process. So he would need to stick to using his conventional powers. As the fight continued on, the wheel would spin, and 1 spin shy of adaptation, Gojo would take the advantage. Gojo tricks Sukuna with a red sneak attack and pushes him closer towards him, only to land a black flash in Sukuna's gut. But before Gojo could finish him off, Maharaga would come from the shadows as the 4th spin of the wheel took place, signifying its adaptation to Infinity. Now, whenever Maharaga slashed at Infinity, it would cancel out the technique, shutting it off, making Gojo vulnerable until he could reactivate the Infinity. With the advantage, Sukuna would summon the Fusion Shikigami of Akito and would turn the battle into a 3v1. Gojo was actually getting pressed here, taking numerous hits and damage, but it was never enough to actually take him down. With a maximum output blue paired with a black flash, Gojo would obliterate Agito, making it back to a 2v1. But Mahoraga had now adapted to blue. You could say this was part of Gojo's plan, because Mahoraga adapting to blue ended up being his weakness, as when he would go to try and destroy blue, if he hadn't adapted to it yet, it would have pulled him in, and he would have destroyed it, stopping Gojo from his plan. But because he had adapted, the effect didn't work, so Gojo could use it to pull himself faster and stop Mahoraga from doing this. This would allow Gojo to unleash his unrestricted Hollow Purple, basically an explosion of Hollow Purple, obliterating Mahoraga before he could finish his adaptation, wounding Sukuna, and leaving everybody watching the battle thinking that Gojo had won. But this is where the wildest twists would come to fruition. The next chapter starts with Gojo already dead, and a flash forward to the conclusion of the fight where Sukuna stands the victor with a bisected Gojo laying in the ground, Darth Maul style. So while Mahoraga had initially found a way to bypass Infinity by adapting to and altering the essence of its cursed energy, that is something that Sukuna could not do. So he had Mahoraga continue to adapt to find a way that he himself could counter Infinity. Sukuna learned that he just needed to change the target of his technique beyond just Gojo. If he targeted the fabric of reality, space itself, Gojo and his Infinity would be torn apart. That would be the end of Gojo Satoru. I remember making this video months back where I predicted that Sukuna could win, and I still remember how many people were dogging me for saying that Sukuna had a chance of winning. My prediction was he was just going to win. Now, they thought Gojo was going to be unbeatable and that he had no true weakness, especially with the inverted spear of heaven at the bottom of the ocean, but that wasn't the case. It was clear that Sukuna would know domain amplification, and so it gave him that mixture of spatial manipulation and power nullification, and even allowed him to enact his plan in the first place. Then we knew that Mahoraga would be able to adapt to Gojo, and that means forming a game plan to counter him. Because of Mahoraga's slash, Sukuna learned that cutting through the space of Infinity itself would give him the W. And I mean, like I said before, spatial cutting has been foreshadowed to be a weakness to Gojo for a long time. This is the main reason why I said Yami would beat Gojo nearly 2 years ago, with one of the main reasons being that a dimension slash would cut Infinity. And now Sukuna is doing almost an identical slash that is doing this as well. A lot of people were saying that this was an ass pull, and I can understand Sukuna being able to attack space itself. If you think that's an ass pull, whatever. But the idea of space being a weakness to Gojo is not. I wouldn't be surprised if Sukuna did some sort of a binding vow that like allowed him to attack space directly or something like that, because just being able to target space itself is pretty crazy. But I really do hope that Gege expands this fight and we actually do see Sukuna land the winning blow, because it does suck that the winning blow is just off screen. But yeah, Sukuna brought the power and the hands, and thanks to Mahoraga, he was able to grab the W. Sukuna might have had the perfect plan of killing Gojo. Now, of course, there are a lot of other ways you can use to beat Gojo than just what Sukuna had, but I just wanted to focus on the battle with Sukuna. I do think it's a very tragic death for Gojo. I was kind of hoping that if Gojo did lose, he would survive, but again, it kind of makes sense. You can't really have him survive if he's the strongest, unless if like his curse technique got stolen, but like it just like makes the most sense for the plot that Gojo is down for the count. I'm actually really excited to see what Gege does from here on out. Kashimo versus Sukuna could be really cool, and then also Kenjaku, what's he plotting? With that being said, hope you guys do enjoy the video and have an amazing day. Peace out.